It's time now for Igniting Change, a weekly provocative and empowering program where you, the listener, can ignite change. Now here's your host, Barbara Onwine.
Get up, stand up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Igniting Change. Oh, we got a great show for you today. But before we get into the show, let me bring up my mighty co-host. You know who I'm talking about, none other than the chair of the board of the Transformative Justice Coalition, one of our nation's most brilliant, activistic attorneys in this country fighting for voting rights. He is amazing, and I am always happy to have him as one of the leaders of the Transformative Justice Coalition, and he's now the president of the TJC Voter Action Fund. So let me bring up one and only Daryl D. Jones. Hey, Daryl.
Hey, Barbara, it must be Tuesday, must be noon Eastern time, because we are talking about igniting change. And Barbara, every time we come on, we say so much happens in the course of the 6 days prior to the show that there's just so much that happens across the country. But today, we're going to focus, Barbara, on our friends at the Southern Poverty Law Center. And my goodness, we have just an outstanding guest that was going to be with us today. And I know, Barbara, that we needed to start, and we needed to give a huge shout out, Barbara, to the voters in Virginia and what they did with that redistricting question.
They showed up and showed out. We encouraged people to make sure that they voted, and we're so proud of not only the voter turnout, but that voters took time to educate themselves on these issues. And it's so important that as we move throughout this year, that voters keep showing up for all and every elections. Right, Daryl?
Absolutely. And Virginia, we're keeping track. We know that there are some folks in Virginia that didn't like the fact that the voters voiced their opinion with regards to redistricting and filed a suit. And the first judge blocked it. The second judge in the circuit court now has overruled that first judge. So we're going to be tracking that matter right up to the Virginia Supreme Court, and hopefully and praying that the voters' voices continue to be heard in that democracy in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Barbara. So you're absolutely right. If you're in the state of Georgia, early voting is underway, Barbara. Early voting is underway in Georgia. So we encourage our people to get out in Georgia and vote.
Yes, please, everyone, and make sure that you show up and that you vote. This is a year where you got to be extremely careful. If you're using mail-in ballots, make sure you submit your mail-in ballots as early as possible. Do not sit on them and mail them at the last minute. All right, so let's get into this show. But before, I just want to remind everybody, last week's show, we talked about May Day Strong, May 1st. May 1st. Make sure that you go to maydaystrong.org and find out where there will be these amazing rallies all over the country, these amazing movements for no shopping, no work, no school. Let's educate ourselves. Let's use that as a teach-in gathering day to show how important it is for the voters and for our voices as residents of this country to be heard. So before we do that, before May 1st gets here, it's also Law Day. Yes, folks, I will be speaking at the Supreme Court on May 1st at noon, and people will be gathering at the Washington Monument with freedcproject.org. freedcproject.org. You can go to it and get some great information about that rally. But at Law Day, we're asking lawyers to reaffirm their oath to our Constitution and our obligation to make sure that all rights in this country are protected. With that said, let's get into our show. I am just so delighted, so honored, so happy that you are listening to this show today because it's important. A lot of people have said, what in the world is an SPLC? That for the Southern Poverty Law Center. I have worked with them over decades. We have brought lawsuits to enforce equality in education. In New Orleans, we had, a problem where they were basically denying students with disabilities their rights to attend the public schools, and we got totally involved in that lawsuit, done other lawsuits with them on workers' rights. TJC is a recipient of the funding that they give to so many groups out in the United States to fight for voting rights and the fight against other racial discrimination. I've also reviewed and circulated the many pamphlets that they have produced to educate people against hate and bigotry. And that is so important. People, we live in a country that has 1,400 plus, some people say it's over 2,000 plus hate groups. And when I say hate groups, I'm not just saying that they say hateful things. They do hateful things. And they are racially, many of them are white supremacists. They hate blacks, Jews, Latinos, Native Americans, anybody who's not, in their opinion, white. They do violence in the streets. They do violence to people's lives. We got to understand that in the United States, ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, did a study and found out that in that study that some 51% of all Americans say that they encounter hate constantly on the internet, racial, vicious, discriminatory, anti-Semitic hate. So people, be aware that our nation exports the majority of the hate that you see on the internet internationally. So this is a real problem. That's why this attack on SPLC is so deeply, deeply troubling. So with that said, Daryl, bring up our guest. We have one of the best guests. Oh, I'm so excited that she is with us. Oh, my goodness, you're in for a treat, everybody. We can't wait. Go ahead, Daryl.
No, you're absolutely right, Barbara. I don't think we get any better than the attorney that we have on as our guest today. The title of the show today is SPLC Under Fire, the DOJ's latest target. And folks, as Barbara has mentioned, if you have not heard, the Department of Justice has filed an indictment, a criminal indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center, talking about its lying to its donors and saying that they were getting money, saying they were fighting hate crime, and they were funding these subversive groups, these racist groups. Well, we have with us today Attorney Monique Abrishami. Attorney Abrishami, she's a litigator, an investigator, an experienced trial attorney, and a former federal prosecutor. Her practice, Levy, Firestone, and Muse, focuses on white-collar criminal defense, internal investigations, and complex civil litigation. So this is precisely the type of issue that she's accustomed to dealing with. But she's a former prosecutor with the Department of Justice. She's now representing companies and unions, nonprofit organizations, individuals under investigation by the Department of Justice. She is one of those people, if you're under investigation by Congress, the IRS, or any of the other three-letter organizations in the federal government, she is the person that you would turn to start picking it apart and find out what it's all about. She advocates on behalf of her clients with government officials. She oversees media strategies as well for them to avoid negative outcomes and how to mitigate any type of negativity that's occurring with regards to her clients and the matters that they're being accused of. You know, she also, where matters proceed to indictment, she navigates the clients through the justice system to achieve their best possible outcomes. Just an incredible litigator. She's been doing this for a good period of time. She's done dozens, many multiple cases on the federal level. She also does it on the state level in the state of Maryland. She, before private practice, Barbara, she clerked for a U.S. judge, Judge Motz, in the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Fourth Circuit. And she also served as a trial attorney with Public Integrity Section of the Criminal Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. She's investigated, prosecuted public officials, including sitting sitting U.S. Senator Robert Menendez in corruption and fraud cases across the country. She's also fluent in Spanish on top of all of that. It is our pleasure to welcome for her maiden voyage on this incredible topic of dealing with the SPLC under fire, Attorney Monique Abrishami. Welcome, Attorney Abrishami.
Thank you. What an incredible introduction. I need you guys in the front of me anytime I enter a room. Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's our honor.
We are just absolutely so honored that you're joining us today and bringing your insight and experience with regards to what's happening with the Southern Poverty Law Center and what's happening with the Department of Justice. So could you share with us what the Southern Poverty Law Center indictment is being charged with? What is the Department of Justice saying that the Southern Poverty Law Center has done?
Sure. So let me start by saying that the case is being handled out of the Middle District of Alabama, so out of the district where the court sits in Montgomery, Alabama. So that has some historical significance, of course, to the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. It's an 11-count indictment. It charges only the SPLC. So that's one thing that is very interesting and sort of unique about the way they're approaching this is no individuals have been charged in this indictment. So it's only the SPLC with 11 counts of wire fraud, false statements to a bank, and a money laundering conspiracy. The money laundering conspiracy is sort of built on the other charges, right? So money laundering is where, in this instance, they're saying they sort of concealed the source of funds that were obtained fraudulently. So, of course, you have to show that the funds were obtained fraudulently and that they knew that they were concealing that. So the overall fraud theory that underlies all of the wire fraud counts that start off the indictment is that the SPLC told donors, hey, give us money, we're going to dismantle white supremacy, we're going to confront hate. But that then not telling donors that what they did with some of the money they received was to fund leaders and organizers of racist groups. So that is their fraud theory, and it's based around the SPLC's longstanding practice of using paid informants embedded within racist groups. So this is I knew about it before the indictment. I'm sure you guys knew about it before the indictment. This is a sort of longstanding SPLC approach to combating racism and hate, and they're using that as the basis for the fraud counts. The false statements to the bank accounts are based on the theory that in order to pay the paid informants in a way that was not open to everyone, that, we're paying paid informants, they opened bank accounts in the names of some fake entities. And so that's the theory of the false statements to the bank. And then the money laundering conspiracy.
Ms. Abrishami, that sounds suspicious there, Ms. Abrishami. When we talk about folks opening accounts under fake names, is that problematic in your view?
Doing accounts under fake names? I mean, I think it depends on what you're intending to do with it. One of the things that's interesting, and actually there was a fairly in-depth Bloomberg article about this that I direct all of your listeners to, is that what's interesting is that the count that they used for the false statements for the bank account, it's 1014. It's not a bank fraud statute that's used a lot. And you have to show the intent to influence a bank action. So it's not enough to just say you made a false statement to the bank. You got to try to get something out of the bank, right? Like you have to try to be getting a loan or an account or something out of the bank out of it. And what the indictment fails to do is actually allege the bank action that they're seeking to influence. So one of the things that the Bloomberg article gets into is talking to a number of lawyers who are pointing out, like, hey, you have to actually see the whole allegation through. You have to say all of the elements of the crime, and it's missing one. So it talks about false or misleading statements to the bank, but it makes two mistakes. One, it doesn't say what are you trying to influence with your false statement, and two, that or misleading statements, as of 2025 in a Supreme Court case, Thompson v. U.S., those statements have to be false. Misleading is not enough. So those are two pleading mistakes on the face of the indictment right off the bat for the bank fraud counts.
Wow. Yeah, I've got to ask the question because I know our listeners are listening to this and they're like, well, wait a minute. Why would the SPLC need to use any type of fake name to open an account? Could you share the theory of why that would be needed with regards to what they were trying to accomplish and getting inside some of these racist hate groups?
Yeah, I mean, a paid informant only works as a paid informant if it's not public that they're being a paid informant, right? You're paying someone who is situated inside a dangerous white supremacist group, as an example, right? And so that person situated inside that group is secretly accepting money from the SPLC. It can't just show up on their bank account, money from the SPLC, right? So the idea behind using the fictitious name is to make sure that it's not sort of clear to everyone that person works with, to the people around them, that they're receiving money from the SPLC. It's the tactic that's used across the board. So, you know, when the FBI pays its informants, the bank statement is not going to say Federal Bureau of Investigation has paid you this money, right? So it's not, of course, it's, you know, it's different if it's the FBI versus a private entity, but it is not. I was not surprised to see that they did that with respect to the money that went out to the paid informants.
And it almost sounds like the people they should have gone after for it. Mr. Abrishami, it almost sounds like the folks they should have focused on wasn't SPLC, but the people then that would have received the money out of that account. Because it was really set up under their names for a fake name for them. Is that right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The fake name that was set up, it wasn't the SPLC's fake name, it was the account of the people that were receiving the money?
No, the fictitious name was, the SPLC was using a fictitious name, doing business as a name in order to have the money that went into the real person's name come from something that wasn't obviously the SPLC. I mean, it's not about, it's funny because you said, like, you know, I wonder who should have actually been focused on. What I would posit is that this indictment does not describe criminal conduct. So I don't know that there should have been anyone focused on as a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, your point is so well taken. I listened again this morning. I forced myself through the torture of watching the press conference at which Kash Patel and the DOJ talked about this indictment. And one thing that hit me is that, you know, I follow closely what the Justice Department does. And sadly, I don't see cases being brought against these hate groups that they know are out there plotting and doing and engaging in dangerous work. I think that they actually may have lied during the press conference because they made a statement that they had no knowledge that SPLC ever was using paid informants. That's just not true. And I was shocked that they took that position because SPLC has worked closely with law enforcement about their information that they've gotten from paid informants to stop, you know, racial hate incidents. And it seems that they are focused on belief that somehow racial hate isn't real and that it's not a real problem, that somebody has to go out there and fabricate it. Now, didn't I start this show talking about the 1,400 hate groups that have been identified in this country by numerous groups? And SPLC was not funding all of that. So it struck me as disingenuous for them to pretend that somehow they did not know that this was going on. And I think SPLC will be able to show in court that they absolutely knew that they had used paid informants in the past. It didn't mean that they knew every informant by name, doesn't mean they knew every instance, but they knew that SPLC was monitoring hate groups and doing this through the use of informants.
I mean, you raise an interesting point, right? This is my sort of fundamental issue with this indictment, which is that it's a fraud indictment. Everyone, I think, fundamentally understands the nature of fraud. Someone lies to you and gets something out of it, right? And so the question is, was anyone ever lied to? You know, which has a component of, do any of the people who gave money, do any of the donors who gave money, did they have an objectively fair understanding that was somehow different from what actually happened? And what the indictment does is it pulls quotes from sort of, you know, public documents and, you know, the website and such that talk about how the SPLC is going to use the money that you donate to confront hate and to fight white supremacy. On two levels, I wonder if there was any fraud. The first is it paying informants to find out what actually happened within these organizations and work against it? Part of fighting hate and white supremacy, so one. And two, you know, let's say you thought, I'm giving money, I'm giving money, and I want to fight hate and supremacy, and I don't think that this public program of paid, because it was public, I knew about it, right? So this public program of paid informants, that's not what I want to spend my money on. Okay. When were those statements made? So the indictment doesn't give any information about the date those statements were posted, who viewed them, whether or not they have any specific donors who are going to testify that I saw those statements before I made my donation. When I made my donation, I understood those statements to mean something else. Then you have to show a judge that reasonably is fraud, right? That is a reasonable interpretation of it. So it's a real uphill battle for the Justice Department on this one.
Yes, and Daryl, when we've been in Montgomery, the one thing I always point out every time we go by the SPLC headquarters, I always point out how it's a bunker, right? Because of all the threats that they get from white supremacist groups, because they took the Klan down. They took one of the big units of the Klan down for its murderous behavior, and when you see that bunker, everybody knows why it exists. It exists because these hate the SPLC for the work that is done as part of its overall huge agenda, but for the work that is done regarding infiltrating and stopping these hate groups. Now, what I find interesting, but I'll get to it later, is the contradiction when we look at the historic use of informants by the FBI itself to infiltrate black civil rights organizations. And they have never apologized for having, the agent in the car with the killers of Viola Liuzzo, knowing what they were going to do. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I just find so morally offensive. Let's talk about this indictment, because they made a big point that this is a nonprofit that did not tell its donors that they were paying informants. And that, to me, was really bizarre, because a lot of donors give what's called general support money, right? General support means we just like everything you do. We don't care about a specific program. We're not asking you to tell us everything about this specific program. We just want to support your organization because we believe in you. So I found that bizarre that they were saying that this group somehow, as a nonprofit, committed a crime because they didn't specifically say your money might be used for paid informants.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you'd have to then think that using money for paid informants is fundamentally inconsistent with what they are doing. That's what they have to show, right? Because you're right. Like, a nonprofit has to file certain forms, 990s, every year telling people what they're doing as a nonprofit. That's part of what they have to do. You don't have to say the minutia of everything you do. Imagine $100 million nonprofits having to say every single thing they're doing. You're absolutely right. You give money to an organization knowing that you sort of generally support what the organization does. So what the Justice Department is making itself have to prove, right? What they are saying they are going to prove is this program, this entire program, is so fundamentally incompatible with what the SPLC was telling people generally it was doing to fight white supremacy, that constitutes criminal fraud. Not negligence, not sort of, they made a mistake or anything, but criminal fraud. The organization as a whole intended to defraud its donors criminally by doing this program in contradiction to what it told its donors it was going to do, which was to fight white supremacy.
Right. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense.
It's certainly an uphill battle.
Attorney Abrishami, I've got to ask you, to me, there seems to be a broader thing that's going on here. And it seems as though that we have these conservative groups that are out trying to quash, squelch, whatever you want to call it, the voting rights, the integrity, the opportunities of minority groups throughout the country. And now we have the acting U.S. Attorney, Todd Blanchard, out there trying to become the U.S. Attorney, and an administration that just every turn seems to have something based on division, racism, sexism, something along those lines. And here we now sit with now the indictment of SPLC. I've got to ask you, do you think that this indictment perhaps is about something larger than SPLC? Are they really trying to have some type of chilling effect of trying to slow civil rights groups, voting rights groups from being as active as they are, saying that we can weaponize this branch of government to come after you?
I mean, this is a big question, right? Like, what is the intent underlying all of this? I mean, what I'll say is this. It is not uncommon for groups from every area, all sides of the political spectrum, to go to the Justice Department and to say, so-and-so is engaging in criminal activity, you really should investigate them. That is not uncommon. That happens on both sides of the aisle, on left and right. It is the job of the Justice Department to impartially and fairly, with an eye towards the administration of justice, investigate any claims that come in and determine whether or not there is criminal conduct. And then, if you're going to take something to indictment, be certain, personally, you, the prosecutor bringing the case, that you have that case beyond a reasonable doubt, and you will take it all the way to trial to win because you believe in it. You stand behind that case as a fair and impartial exercise of justice. So, everyone gets to tell the Justice Department what they want you to do. You are the one who has to be, you, the Justice Department, are the entity that has to actually administer justice. So I look at this indictment and I think this indictment is just not great. Like, as a lawyer looking at it, I'm not even talking, there's no sort of political animus here. I'm looking at it and thinking, this isn't a great indictment. This isn't a winning case. So it's unclear to me why the Justice Department would bring a case that just doesn't look like a winner, that doesn't look like there was real criminal activity here, if what they're interested in doing is fairly and impartially enforcing the law the way it is written. I'll say that.
This really takes us into another part of this, I think, because if you are the attorney, if you are the assistant U.S. attorney or federal prosecutor that's got to go in to fight for this particular case, you're putting your reputation on the line every time you step into that courtroom to make
in front of a judge.
Yeah, it's got to have some impact with regards to the federal prosecutors that are bringing these cases. I could not imagine Monique Abrishami stepping into a courtroom, as you just said, saying, I don't believe in this case. I don't believe it's a criminal offense, but I'm going to make this argument in front of this court. I just don't believe it. Is that impact happening in DOJ, in your opinion?
I think you will see, if you look at the news, there are a lot of indictments that seem to be being brought without line attorneys signing them. And that is a sign to everyone about whether the people who are devoting their careers to the interests of justice, if they are not signing something, that means they're not willing to go into court and say, I firmly believe, I stand behind this. I say there's criminal conduct here. And so, I don't want to say what I think the entire Department of Justice is thinking or the intent behind it, but there are clues that are not – this isn't rocket science, right? There are clues that are very easy to see. If you don't have people who are signing these indictments and who are really believing them sort of across the board, that gives you a sense for whether or not you've lost the people who day in and day out assess these cases and determine whether or not they think that there's real criminal conduct there.
You used the phrase line attorneys signing. Could you explain to our audience what you mean? Because those of us who aren't familiar with the federal system, you're talking about a line attorney. I don't know what that is. It's just a line of attorneys and somebody just signs. What do you mean by a line attorney signing off on an indictment?
I appreciate that. That's right. You got to be careful with the jargon. So in the Justice Department, there are the people who are in front of the cameras and at the podium, which actually is happening more than I've ever seen before, but separately. All right. Those people are the political appointees. So in local prosecutors' offices, those are the U.S. attorneys. They're not actually the ones who are doing the work. So the work of the Justice Department is handled by what are called line attorneys. They are the prosecutors who do the work day in and day out, that do the investigations, that bring the cases. They're the ones who write the indictments. They're the ones who present them to the grand jury. They're the ones who present all the legal arguments in court. Like, they're the ones who are doing the work. Those people serve across administrations. People will be at the Justice Department for 25 years, and in 25 years they will serve in Democratic and Republican administrations. It makes no difference. A good line prosecutor is looking at the facts of the case and the statute and determining, is there a crime here? And if there is, I'm going to pursue it. And I'm not going to worry about what my personal politics are or anything. I'm here to serve the interests of justice. Okay. The line attorney is your best bet to see whether or not something is, I think, this is sort of my opinion, whether if you are seeing line attorneys, the folks who are there day in and day out, whose careers are dependent on judges believing them, on working well with defense counsel, right? There's just sort of a reality to being a lawyer in the justice system. It's like you have to be trusted. Once you lose trust of the people around you, that's it. No one believes you in court. You can't negotiate plea agreements with defense counsel. Like, no one will believe you. So you have to really believe in what you are doing. So you don't want, in part, to risk your reputation by supporting cases that are not righteous, but also you don't believe in them. And you don't go to the Justice Department because you want to make mischief. You go to the Justice Department because you're, a good lawyer who believes in justice. And so those folks are going to present cases, sign indictments, take cases to trial that they really believe, okay, this is a criminal act. I'm going to go ahead and support this. And sometimes there will be an acquittal, and that happens, right? It happens that there are acquittals, but the prosecutors will really believe in what they're doing. So that's the line. The line attorney is the one who's doing the work.
Do we know if a line attorney signed off on the SPLC indictment?
I saw that the SPLC indictment has a line attorney who signed off, so there is someone in the office who conducted this investigation and who believes in it. So there is an AUSA who signed off on it. And again, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. They conduct an investigation for a long time. They believe in the work that they've done. I will give people the benefit of the doubt. I read this indictment and think this is not a strong case. This is a weak case.
And that is such a deviation from the reputation of the Department of Justice. When I came to D.C. To work with the Lawyers Committee, the first thing I heard about at the Justice Department was what they called the J memo, and how hard these J memos were to write and to get them approved by supervisors. And the J memo basically was the justification for why you wanted to bring a particular lawsuit. And people talked endlessly about how difficult it was to do these memos well, how difficult it was to get them approved. The Justice Department was just not out there signing off on any and everything. It was renowned. Yeah.
I can speak of that personally. I once wrote an 80-page prosecution memo that failed.
There you go. And that's what people need to understand. That's why. Go ahead. That's why so many people who are former Justice Department attorneys are just so incensed and so dismayed because they feel like their reputations have been somehow tainted by this Justice Department that has gone out there and brought charges against Letitia James and doing clear forum shopping from one jurisdiction to another, trying to indict somebody, and grand jury said no again. The Comey indictment, judges dismissing cases because they're filed wrong, that they have the wrong attorneys signing on to these cases. So much. And people, I see a lot of former DOJ lawyers, and they just shake their heads. Attorney Abrishami, how does that strike you as a former DOJ attorney?
I mean, I think one thing that I find interesting about all of this is that folks who go to the Justice Department are often people who are basically, they were at the top of their class. They went to great schools. Right. They were at the top of the class. They like winning. Right. They like the A, right? That means the reason you do an 80-page, you called them a J memo, we called them PROS memos, is you want to lay it out, you want to convince everyone, you want to convince the room, and you want to win, right? So what I am finding, I agree with you that I look back, the with some dismay as what is happening at the Justice Department, and the fact that the standards seem to not be what they used to be. But I also just hate to see, what, are we comfortable with losing now? Is that a thing we're fine with? Like, don't we want to bring cases that win? And if you want to bring cases that win, you have to bring your A game. These are federal defense lawyers. These are federal judges. This is a big time, folks. Like, we can't be doing indictments that don't have all the elements in them, or bringing cases before we reviewed the body cam footage, or bringing cases that sort of seem silly on their face. Grand juries are rejecting cases now. Like, do we just lose now? And these are our lawyers. These are the people's lawyers. I want to pay them to win. So part of it is, yes, this is a travesty of justice that these cases are being brought. But it's also the Justice Department has a long-standing reputation of being a class of sterling lawyers who bring excellent cases and win them. And it's a shame to see that among the other issues that I'm also seeing, to see that be happening.
You had grand jury rejection, and I just want to be certain our audience understands how rare that is and why you're lifting up the grand jury rejection of an indictment that is being sought by the Department of Justice. And that's one of the things I think that happened with Attorney General Letitia James out of New York, was that the grand jury rejected, I think, when they went back to indict her again. Could you share with the audience, number one, what the grand jury process is, and number two, why it's so rare that the justice would bring something to a grand jury and be rejected by that grand jury?
Sure. So when people think about juries, they think about the kind of juries that you see on television, the jury that sort of sits in a courtroom. A grand jury, more likely than not, actually will sit in something that looks like a classroom, right? So a grand jury is a group of folks who meet secretively. They're not out in the public, and they are subject to a federal law, 6E, that prevents them from speaking out about anything that's happening. This is sort of part of the general culture of innocent until proven guilty. That is a bedrock foundational principle in our justice system. And so you can present things to the grand jury knowing that they're going to be secret and not talked about so that people's reputations aren't sort of tarnished unnecessarily. The grand jury is a group of people. They go in, they meet week after week, and they hear evidence on a bunch of different cases from the prosecutors. And then there is a determination about whether or not there's probable cause to bring a case. It is not a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. You present an indictment to a grand jury, and the grand jury just has to say, hey, is there probable cause? Is there a reason to believe that a crime has been committed? If so, I'll sign off on it. That means there are two interesting things about grand juries rejecting cases. The first is that the only person in the room besides the grand jury and a court reporter is the prosecutor. There is no defense counsel who is presenting a defense case. There's no judge who's sort of arbitrating the rules of sort of what the law is. No one is making things fair and balanced in the grand jury. It is generally understood, and everyone understands it to be, a one-sided version of a case. So the grand jury is already predisposed to believe it because, of course, there's no cross-examination, there's no reason not to believe what's in front of them. The second is that it's only a probable cause standard. It's not a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. So the grand jury just has to ask itself, given all of this prosecutor-presented information, do I think a crime probably happened? Or, is there probable cause that a crime happened? Yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and indict. So for an indictment not to be signed, that means a grand jury, having received only a one-sided picture of what happened, has to say, yeah, I don't even think there's probable cause. Like, this is just straight up, like, nothing happened here, right? So it's very unusual for that to happen. So when you see a grand jury indicting a case, that means a group of people secretively in a room, they know no one is, if they voted for it, they voted for the indictment, no one's going to know who they were, so they're secretive, that they're protected by that. They're still saying, yeah, no, I'm not signing an indictment here.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, because a lot of people just get confused, and it's good for folks to be able to put and capitalize and understand the whole grand jury process. The interaction between the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, and DOJ. Could you share with our audience, does the FBI do investigations for DOJ in these types of cases? Are they involved in any part of it?
So for fraud and corruption cases in particular, the FBI and the DOJ, the line prosecutors that I described earlier who are on an investigation, will work very closely together in developing and executing an investigative plan. So the FBI might do what's called knock and talks, which means they'll go to people's doors and they literally knock on them and see if they want to talk to them. So that they might do alone. But the majority of the interviews that are conducted in furtherance of a fraud or corruption case will involve the FBI will be there, as will the prosecutors. They are part of the investigative process. They are part of the process, the FBI and the prosecutors, of deciding, hey, what documents do we need? What search warrants do we want to go after? They work really closely together in putting together the whole case. And so the investigators, the FBI won't necessarily drive the investigation any more than the prosecutors would. You should think of the prosecutor as an investigator in their own right for a fraud or corruption case.
And Barbara, I know you wanted to talk a little about the COINTELPRO, that type of situation. Ms. Abrishami, it seems as though there are a lot of questions that are also being pushed about Federal Bureau of Investigations and how they're conducting their investigation and the whole weaponization of that department as well. Do you have any thoughts in that realm, in that arena?
So I'll say that to the extent that you have, to the extent that folks have concerns about what the Justice Department is doing, it is impossible to divorce what the prosecutors are doing from what the FBI is doing. They are working together to develop strategy. They are working together to develop cases. And if you're concerned about one, you should be concerned about the other. For me personally, I'm waiting to see how some of this turns out. How some of these cases shake out, how the criminal justice system responds as a whole to some of these cases. What I'm really interested in seeing is whether or not the Justice Department is going to pick back up its traditional bread and butter fraud investigations, its traditional bread and butter corruption investigations, the stuff that's not, headline grabbing cultural fight involved, like literally just like this guy stole from a bunch of people, the standard issue fraud investigations. Those seem to be down a bit, I'll say. And so I'm interested to see if they pick those back up. And if they do, I'll have a lot more comfort in what's happening overall.
But absolutely, and I can't wait to see a Justice Department that's pursuing voting rights cases where people are being discriminated against on the basis of their race. There's so much wrong, and I am deeply saddened by the exodus, both forced and voluntarily, in the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, and those who have just left, who have said, I will not bring this case or that case because it's unrighteous. I'm worried. And my question goes to the timing of this. It's no accident to me that Kash Patel gets accused of public intoxication, gets accused of misusing federal resources in order to court his girlfriend, that all of these things happen, and he gets this monthly expose comes out in The Atlantic, and he goes ballistic and sues them, but also this lawsuit. One thing is there's in politics, we know there's the politics of distraction. When you got the politics of incompetence, the politics of heat for political misconduct, there's always the reality of the politics of distraction. Daryl, that's what I think we're looking at in part here, because this indictment is so far-fetched.
I would agree with you, Barbara, that there certainly is the politics of distraction that's going on with regards to Kash Patel and the FBI and all the issues that are being developed over there. But you also have the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who's trying to get confirmed right, as the U.S. Attorney General, and he wants to be certain that he does the bidding to try to get to that position. And so I think it's a combination of those two that puts SPLC in the crosshairs of something that, as Attorney Abrishami has laid out, that on paper, the elements just aren't there. I mean, it just appears to me to be political theater. That's what this looks like. And that's what's really concerning to me, is that it's political theater and it's done to have a chilling effect on other organizations, on any organization that's fighting for racial justice in this country. That's one of those big concerns that are laid out there. And I've got to ask you, Attorney Abrishami, what can folks do? Folks are listening to this station today. They're listening to this broadcast today. They're listening to what you've laid out. They're upset. They're bothered because they hear about the weakness. They see them going after an organization that historically has stood up with all types of integrity and fought for marginalized communities to be included within the big picture and to be treated fairly. People that are listening to this, what can they do to show their support of the SPLC and to show their disdain of what's happening with this prosecution?
So I'll start by saying what I have been trying to tell people across the board, which is to start by taking a deep breath and trying as much as possible not to catastrophize everything that is happening, because I think that can get exhausting, and that can make it so that people start to feel like they throw their hands up because there's nothing they can do. To those of you for whom this will give any comfort, I know the lawyers who are representing the SPLC, and they are so good. They are very good lawyers. So first, I just want to tell everyone that the system is designed, the criminal justice system. You're talking to a former prosecutor, you're talking to someone who lives in the system. I know that there are absolutely legitimate complaints about the system, but the system is designed to help handle cases like this and to mete out justice. So I believe there's going to be a vibrant motions practice preceding any sort of trial that is going to give a really hard look to the legal validity of these claims. And I think that there might even be some justice meted out before there is even a trial. And if this goes to trial, the SPLC has excellent lawyers. So I will start with that. Generally speaking, I think folks who are, frustrated with anything that is happening, to lean into all of the things that you do that are meaningful to you, that you feel that affect change, even if they don't have anything particularly to do with this situation, is what I'm encouraging everyone to do right now, which is, what are your strengths? What are the things what are your core competencies to make change or make things happen? Maybe it has nothing to do with SPLC, but instead you are actually someone who's an environmental advocate, or you're someone who's sort of in another area. Lean into the things where your voice is the best heard, and that will help you get past this sort of feelings of helplessness or difficulty that you're having about this particular instance, and sort of help you move forward. That's my general thinking, although I defer to you both. You're both more in the realm of transformative justice, and I would be interested to see what you've had to say too.
Well, we're going to tell you that you're 100% on point. And what we tell people all the time is that there comes a point where you've just, things happen in a courtroom between the judge and the attorneys and all the things that occur there. But there are also forces outside the courtroom that can force conversation within the courtroom. And this May Day that's coming up, May Day Strong, is an opportunity for people across this country to stand up and let them know how you feel. You can go to one of the May Day Strong activations with signs saying that you support SPLC. Do right by SPLC. You've got to show your support for whatever the cause is that you're pushing for. Barbara, we always say, and I love to say that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. Folks have got to know that you're hungry for justice and that you perceive this as being an injustice. So we encourage you to go to the Mayday Strong website, maydaystrong.org, find out where there's an activation going on near you, and show up and show out and show your support. I know that you want to speak to that too, Barbara.
Yes, there's so many things that we should do. Everyone, educate yourself. Follow this case. We, and when I say we, a lot of civil rights organizations and voting rights organizations, we have come together and we are issuing statements that are I think, educational about this particular indictment. There's some good ones from Common Cause, ACLU, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, Transformative Justice Coalition, of course. You can go to our website and see our statement. But we just want people to understand that hate should never be tolerated in our country. You know, that hate led to Dylan Roof shooting and killing 9 people at Mother Emanuel Church. That hate led to the Buffalo killer. That hate led to so many awful instances of slaughter and bloodshed. People, we have to support groups that try to stop hate, that we have to make sure that this administration is held accountable for hiring some of these members of these hate groups. We have to make sure, I know that goes beyond the discussion, but we got to make sure that the FBI itself did a report on the infiltration by hate groups of law enforcement all over this country. And that report was redone years later and found the same reality. So there's a lot should be going on proactively to stop hate groups from inciting violence and from making our country so divided. I have no love of this administration embracing the Proud Boys, which it has done. I have no love of these kinds of, hate groups being given so much access and influence within this administration. Folks, this is serious. We are committed to the creation of a just, multiracial, non-sexist, and robust democracy, multiracial democracy. That does not happen when we have this kind of hate. I give it back to you, Daryl, to take us home.
You're absolutely right. And Monique Abrishami, folks are listening to this show. They're like, I got to get a hold of her. I need to talk to her for various reasons. I need her on my show and all this other stuff. How do people reach you if they need to get a hold of you? And if you could give us your closing 1 minute thought.
Well, I'm honestly not that hard to find because my name is so unusual. You can just Google Monique Abrishami and you'll see my law firm's website come right up. So my closing thought sort of harkens back to what I had said just a moment ago, which is, the course of history is long, and you can get very exhausted very quickly if you don't sort of take a long view. So take a deep breath, take a long view, take care of yourself, and we'll all get through this.
Folks, take that deep breath, get off the sidewalk, get in the streets, and get in some good trouble. Get your vote on. Go to maydaystrong.org and get involved in one of the activations in your neighborhood. Until next Tuesday, noon, Eastern Standard Time, peace, everybody.
Peace.